And just about the time I got to midfield, here comes that beaver. And the crowd just roared, and nobody ever knew I was there. But since you told us.
Welcome everyone to tonight's program. We're so glad that you're here, and our special guests are here to tell us some tales of Saline County Rivalry. Thank you, Brent, for putting this together. We've been talking about it for a while and how exciting it is the same month as the softball. If you're like me, if you grew up in this area, then you watch some of these teams play each other, whether it's basketball or baseball or football or whatever it may be. Dance team, any dancers over here? Okay. But I'm so glad that I can present to you our mayor, Tom Farmer, here on our left, who was a West Side Bulldog coach when I was in junior high, and Shane Broadway. Thank you for being here, Shane. As you all know, he is the life and breath behind the salt bowl.
No, that would be him.
Well, and Tom Farmer, and all of you guys, we wouldn't be here without you celebrating those teams. And then Coach Fulcher, another coach from my past that we loved growing up watching and tried to, emulate, as well as Dwight Fite, the legend himself. So thank you for being here. Former state representative, a lot of accolades behind each of them. I'll let them tell you more about themselves. And Brent, I think you want to have a few words also.
Thank you all for coming tonight. I know you had other options tonight on this warm August evening, and we appreciate everyone for coming out. It's been a lot of vacations going on this summer, so we've had a pretty light crowd. This is good to see things starting to turn around, and hang in there because the rest of the fall we've got some pretty exciting stuff. So what I'd like to do tonight, I kind of have a small agenda. It's going to be mostly letting these guys talk about their past and what they know about the history of sports here in Saline County and all the rivalries that have happened. Hint, there's some others besides Benton and Bryant, from what I understand as well. But so what we'll do is we'll just start over there. Those microphones should be on. And if you want to tell a little bit about your years of coaching, and then we'll turn around. We'll start with some questions and see if that'll spark some.
Okay. Can everybody hear that?
Let's see.
Well, it is a blessing to be here, especially, but it's a blessing to be anywhere at this stage. And you talk about being a legend. I may be a legend for not being able to hold a job. I coached at Benton and Bauxite and Bryant and Harmony Grove. Spent 6 years at Harmony Grove. That was great fun. The kids out there didn't really understand because we'd started football and they were just excited to have a team. And I can remember our first game we had with Glenrose. And I was talking to one of the players and I said, I don't much like those guys over at Glenrose, do you? And he said, I don't know. I said, do you know some of them? I was just thinking of my Benton and Bauxite days and Bryant days. I was going to mention some things to you kind of about how the whole thing started. And Sara mentioned basketball. And when I was very, very small, I remember the big things that seemed to be important in Saline County, especially sports-wise, were football and basketball and baseball. And we used to go to the county tournaments, the county basketball tournaments, and it wasn't just boys that were a big deal, it was girls too. But they played 3-on-3. One team played offense, another team played defense. But it was a big deal. One year they might have it at Harmony Grove, and another year they had Ruledale played at that time as well. But my first football games that I started seeing were Benton and Bauxite games. And I really think a whole lot of the rivalry had to do with this whole county and community operated around the plants that were built, the aluminum plants. And everybody worked there and they'd all go and brag on their teams or talk. It was a topic of continually talking about, and when I was a little boy, I remember talking about, boy, Bauxite's going to be good if they can stay healthy. If Bug Campbell can make it, they're really going to be good. And then Before that, it was Muscle Campbell. And in Benton, they had Spaggio Richards. So they had professional guys that went on and made successful professional players on both teams. But Benton and Bauxite was a big deal. And I believe, if I remember correctly, and Donnie Burks was supposed to be here, he probably would know. My understanding is that Bauxite won the last game that they ever played with Benton. And they also won the last game they ever played with Bryant. But the big rivalry in those days was Benton and Bauxite. And this transpired into my feelings later on when I had was coaching at Bryant. We were a small school, and I really felt like to make us more important in the county and to inspire some of our players that it'd be good for us to play Benton. So this was in 1975 that I called Coach Graham and scheduled the first game to be played with Benton and Bryant. And at that time, Benton was quite a bit bigger than Bryant, so after I scheduled the game, I took a job in DeKalb, Texas.
Good move.
But it was, did I do that? But it was a while before Bryant won a game, and I'd asked Don's brother Richard to come tonight specifically because he coached at Bryant at the first year that Bryant ever beat Benton. But it happened to be a noteworthy year because in 1977 we won the state championship in Benton. And then in 1978 we went to Bryant to play, and we lost to Bryant. And you can understand what a big deal it was because they all bought T-shirts. And I'm talking about, I guess, everybody in Bryant. I can remember reading them. I was there, and it had the score of the game. So it was an important deal, and it wound up being a more important deal, and I guess more significant in my life because the reason I got to coach at Benton is because Bryant beat Benton 3 years in a row. So they fired that coach, and they got him another one. But the first guy I called when I got the job to coach at Benton was Don Fulcher. And I called him to be my defensive coach. And the thing I can really remember about the first time we beat Bryant was in a driving rainstorm, and Don was blitzing those linebackers, and I was thinking, boy, isn't this great? Guy can't stand up or see anyway, and Don sending Corey Hill and Brian Callahan down their throat. So I will let Don speak maybe on some of his memories or some significant games between Benton and Bryant.
And that particular one, it was pouring down rain. We were on our sideline. We couldn't see Brian on the other side, and that's how hard it was raining at times. And like I said, I think Charles Norris, he had a pretty good game that night too.
Yep.
He had a career night.
Chuck
against,
Norris.
Chuck. Called him Chuck. Yeah. But there were some good games. Of course, I don't know. He decided he needed to leave me about 1999, and I came close saying, well, I need to go somewhere else. But I hung on. What, 99 or 98?
98. Yeah.
So anyway, I stayed around there. I started out coaching at Crossett. I was down there 8 years, and then, came to Benton as defense coordinator with Dwight here, and finished out 27 years here at Benton. I said 35, that's enough for me. But, there's some good memories. There's some bad memories of that Bryant game, and I think the last time, I think Benton, we can boast on this. We beat Bryant twice in the same year. And that just happened to be, I think that was my son's senior year in high school. Yeah. So anyway, that's another good memory, that beat them twice the same year.
Well, let me mention something about the rivalry aspect of this. It got to be interesting to me. Was it got to be so important that Bryant would come over here and try to paint our Panther. We had that mascot, and they painted it pink. But what? It's kind of like Joseph said to his brothers, "You meant it for harm, but God meant it for good." They painted that Panther pink, and all of a sudden we started being the Pink Panthers. That's what year we won the state championship, and every time we came on the field, they played the Pink Panther. Boy, and when you're good, it's hard to make anything seem bad. It's great to come out to that Pink Panther, and the Royal Theater would play. One year they'd play the Pink Panther movie. Next year it was Revenge of the Pink Panther. And, so that all turned out great. And not only that, we had a guy, Jeff Goff's dad, ran the airport. And I'm not going to accuse him or blame him. I don't know that it's ever been proven. But somebody got in an airplane and hauled a big load of pink marshmallows and dropped them all over the Bryant campus.
I was on the playground. The wind caught it. The wind caught it. It was supposed to land on the high school, and the wind caught it and pushed it down to the playground.
I didn't say he was a good pilot. But it was such a neat thing. And I know Coach Graham, if any of you remember, Max Graham was our head coach at the time. He's a great big guy and a rough-looking guy. But he's a great man, great coach, and was coached that state championship team. But we'd had the week of the Bryant game, we'd had a B team game, and all the coaches were at the B team game, and we were coming back. And there were a carload of kids over there messing with that Panther. They were painting the Panther again. And as it turned out, all the boys jumped in the car and drove off. And Coach Graham told us assistant coaches, "Y'all go chase them girls down." I don't know if I could have caught the boys, but we caught the girls. And we bring them in, and Coach Graham did his best to scare them to death. And I'm sure he did. He was going to keep them till the pep rally, and he was going to bring them out and this and that. But somehow or other, we wound up letting them go, and that kind of passed. But that was the kind of things that we were doing at that time. That we're all pretty innocent and really created the rivalry. And eventually, as it turned out, the schedule wound up us playing Bryant the last game of the year. We wound up being in the same conference, and almost every year we were playing for an opportunity to go to the playoffs. So that created even more interest in that. And I'm so amazed and have such a high regard for what Coach Farmer and Shane had done with the Salt Bowl, because they have done so much to contribute to different organizations and needy things, and it's turned into a beautiful thing and really got so much attention toward that game that players got a lot of recognition early in the year and turned out, really to be a big deal. But it all started from intense rivalry and a lot of fun on the part of the students. And there's no way, even as much good as that game's done and as exciting as it is, they could have had any more fun than students playing at their own stadiums, and which they're going back to. And the conference aspect of it, when you were looking every year, every game you played, you'd always look to see how did Bryant do, and they're doing the same thing with us. And I'll tell you one more thing, the worst team I ever had here. And, we won the first game of the year, and then we didn't win another game till it came time to play Bryant. And Bryant actually had a pretty good football team. And I mean, it must have been right at the end of the game, wasn't it, John? Yeah. A guy, we had a big old tackle, and I'm thinking of his name all day. But anyway, we got down to the goal line, And he actually picked up one of our running backs and walked over and set him in the end zone for a touchdown. Back then, that was against the rules, but he didn't know it was against the rules, so it didn't count. We scored a touchdown and beat Bryant. And then my last year, Coach.
A big David McGee.
No, it's a big black kid. I think the road. Anyway, Coach Farmer's son, Tad, was the quarterback the last game I coached. And Bryant, again, may have had the better team. But Bryant had started throwing the football and really had changed their offense and opened things more like it is today, opened things up. And we were still kind of grinding it out. Hadn't been able to do anything the whole game. Coach Fulcher was keeping us in the ball game, and I remember late in the fourth quarter, I got impatient, or I'd given up on our offense. We had a 4th and 7 on about our own 30-yard line, so I went for it, and I didn't make it then either. But anyway, we were able to hold them and went down and won that game, and I just fell on my knees. Thank you, Lord. But then they went on to develop something really special. Coach Farmer was a coach at Benton, and he helped us so much to accomplish whatever we accomplished. And but he was athletic director at Bryant when he and Shane really did some organizational work and did a lot of work to accomplish some great things. I don't know if there's anything in the state of Arkansas as far as high school football you could even compare it to in what they've accomplished with their work there. Shane, I guess y'all can follow up on that.
You want to go first?
First, I had a little surgery, so I have a hard time talking sometimes. But I'm gonna tell you about these two guys right here. They are some of the best people in the world. And I'll never forget, I went to Coach and I said, hey, I'm gonna apply for the Bryant job. And he said, why? What do you mean, why? Because he goes, you don't want to go over there. They can't win. And I said, well,
At the time was true.
I said, I'm going to change that. And so we get over there. I get over in 1990. First game that we play against Benton, we always have a word of prayer before the game. So the young man I asked to pray, he said, yeah, I'll be glad to. And he says, Lord, we don't deserve to win this game. And we just had this big motivational speech, and they were fired up, and it took everything, and he was right. We didn't deserve to win it, and we didn't. But it was a lot of fun because I started in 1980 in Benton, coached the high school, went to West Side for a little while, went to East Side for a little while, and ended up in Bryant. But in 1999, the year that we played twice, we were at C.W. Lewis. And if you remember any of it, have any of you there? None of you were there? Oh, well, good. There were 11,900 people at that ball game. And we were shoulder to shoulder. And there was no room to talk. There was no room to do anything. And someone said, there's a fight in the end zone. And I'm going, well, let them fight. They can't do no harm because we couldn't get to them. So after that, I called Shane and I called Gary James. I said, look, we got to move this thing to War Memorial Stadium. So I went in and talked Vicki Logan with, I had a lot of different superintendents at Bryant in my career, but Vicki Logan was the superintendent. And I said, look, I'm going to move the ball game to War Memorial Stadium. And she goes, I'm going to fire you after it's all said and done because it ain't going to work. And I said, well, it's going to bring in finance. It's going to be good for all the kids. And we did. And for 25 years, it was a success. It helped every athletic department. It was a great rivalry. It was a lot of fun because it not only affected the football players that got to go out and play on the stadium where the Razorbacks play, but it affected the band, the cheerleaders, the Pee Wee football players, and all the many kids that got to run on that stadium. That's what the excitement was all about. And now, where it's back at Benton, where it really all started, C.W. Lewis, it's going to be real exciting because we're going to squeeze 7,000 people into that stadium that holds 4,000. So,
Tom, what you mentioned about that 11,000, it didn't hold 11,000. They were on top of buses, they were sitting on top of buildings.
They were on top of what's now City Hall.
yeah,
It was a real hall building.
Yeah,
I was sitting on the pylon in the end zone. I mean, literally sitting on the pylon, and that's what you actually looked at me and said, "We can't do this anymore." That's when you made the call the next day, like we got to do something different. So let me back up and tell a few things. Number one of the first people on this planet who knew that I was alive was that man right there. He was coaching at Bryant. My aunt, you didn't have social media obviously back in those days. The day I was born, my aunt calls the football office. My brother is out on the practice field, he said, with my face down in the mud. And Coach Fite walks by and says, "Broadway, you got a baby brother. Keep pushing." That's all he said. That's all he told my brother. "You got a baby brother." 2 weeks later, I was at my first football game that Coach Dwight Fite coached. And he's been a dear, special friend to our family for many, many years. And I remember, you were talking about Sarah was probably there some as well. On some of those Friday mornings that Coach was talking about painting the Panther, and I remember I saw Coach Brainerd the other night, first time I'd seen him in a long time. And of course, back then rumors would run wild all week. It's kind of like Henderson and OBU. Now that I'm a part of that rivalry, I mean, we cover the fountains all week. We leave the stadium lights on all week. And I thought, that's crazy. But then I remembered, no, it's not. I remember Brainerd put out a call one night that the rumor was that Benton was going to come and paint the Bryant field pink. So we all pitched tents and camped out on the field, and they left the stadium lights on all night, just in case anybody showed up. There was always the threat that we were going to go and paint the Panther pink. But every Friday morning of the game, Benton would go to Ed and Alma's, and Bryant would go to Shoney's, what is now Colton's, for breakfast. And then we would meet up on Military. And there were probably a few eggs thrown. There were probably a few running backs arrested the morning of the game. And that became the story, were they going to be out of jail in time for the game? There was always a rumor. I never knew if they actually got arrested or not. We never saw a booking thing, but and that's what created, I think, the greatest rivalry in high school football in Arkansas was just that atmosphere at both of those stadiums. And back then, I mean, there were years where y'all had no business winning that game, and that's the beauty of these two guys right here. Bryant had a lot more talent than some of those years. There is no doubt, and they will tell you that. These two guys are magicians when it came to winning football games. And I recall that. I always tell the story, this is about Boxside. Same kind of thing. John Watson had this team one year that they had no talent whatsoever. And they get into the playoffs, and they win one game, they win 2 games. After the second game, I walk into Watson's office and said, "You have no talent on this team, but you keep winning." I said, "I'll tell you what, if you win next week, I'm buying the beer." I get out there the next week by halftime, ball game's over. I roll up to the red gate letter. I walk in, the old boy working there says, "Senator Broadway. Coach Watson said I should be expecting you." I've already got it on ice. So those teams like that, and he would always badmouth his team. Coach speak, "Oh, we're terrible, our grandmother could beat us," and those kind of things. But they would always, at the end of the day, find a way to win. And that's what made it fun, and it made it such a great rivalry, and that's what Tom had the vision. He come to Gary and I. Of course, Gary, if you know Gary James, he does nothing on a small scale. Gary, I mean, he was at Coca-Cola at the time. And so we started kind of plotting and planning, all right, so what do we're going to do this, what do we do now? And so Gary said, "I'll bring the coats." And the first idea we had was to get all of the banks to go together and pool their money and buy hot dogs. So we gave away 5,000 hot dogs, I think the first time we went up there. And that's what started it all. We didn't have it, I don't know if we had a t-shirt. It was on the west, oh yeah, we did on the west side the first year.
On the west side.
Here, hand me that one, so you can still talk in that money.
Yeah, we started out with the tailgate party on the west side of the
That's
stadium.
Yeah.
And we didn't know what to expect, but so many people showed up. We said, no more. You know, what I remember about the hot dogs, we're sitting up there in the monsoons are coming, and we're sitting in Coach Stagg's office who ran Former Memorial Stadium, and we're ready for the game, and I'm thinking there's not gonna be a game because it's raining so hard, and the hot dog truck pulls up. And I looked at Gary and I said, did you cancel the hot dogs? He goes, no. He looks at Shane, did you cancel the hot dogs? No. And then they looked at me and I said, you go out and tell him we're not taking those hot dogs.
That was the hurricane game.
Yeah.
Yeah, Goose Stop.
And
Yeah.
the rivalry's so big, we still sold 2,000 tickets at the stadium.
Yes. In a hurricane.
In a hurricane, yeah.
But that's really kind of how it started, was those banks, and they came up and had their own booths and passed it out, and then we had the idea for the shirt, and then, I mean, if it wasn't, obviously, you know, you had to have sponsors, so Everett paid for the stadium rental.
That's correct.
And Big Red paid for the scoreboard.
Yes.
Because it was that video board, you had to pay for those. And so, thanks to them, the first ticket sold was profit. And so it became really a fundraiser, and that's the way it still is. A fundraiser for both athletic programs. And thanks to all of our sponsors and all of our volunteers over the years, I mean, we had a hot dog cooking crew, every bank loaned us their grill to be able to cut the hot dogs. And then we had the idea for a t-shirt. Then we had the idea for the tailgate party where we would have vendors out there, and Midtown Church put in a kid zone and all of those things.
And remember, we decided, you know, it's time to give back to the community.
Yeah.
So we had the peanut butter drive and the cancer drive and the other things to help.
Well, one of the things that started it was Coach Nethery had leukemia.
That's right.
And so Scott Nethery had leukemia, and so we did a blood drive to benefit him. And then we had the peanut butter, and then Goodwill. We had cancer. We partnered with Goodwill, and that's really what I mean. I think that was kind of your idea was, all right, the game itself is going to be something, but how do we make it more than just a game? And that's the thing we kind of went with. It's more than just a game. We want it to be where kids learn the importance of giving back to those less fortunate in our community. And that was the peanut butter drive, because the schools, we still do that. The schools keep the peanut butter, and it goes into the Better Futures program. I think that Benton and Bright Futures, that Benton and Bright both have, and so and Goodwill gives a check to the schools based on the amount of clothing that's donated, and we still do the blood drive. They're going to have the blood drive, I think, next week.
Next week, Monday.
And so it was more than, you know, we wanted, because it drew so much attention, you know, we've never spent a dime on advertising.
Not one.
I mean, every year when I send out that press release, and I'm gonna hit it in the morning, you know, media calls, Shelli, I mean, everybody, you know, posts it, reposts it, and it just draws the attention. And the TV stations have already called about sitting up live, you know, out at Panther Stadium.
I've had several calls from all three of them that want to be there.
Yeah.
So, and we're gonna try to do it just like we did at War Memorial Stadium, at Panther Stadium. There'll be a tailgate party. We got something new this year called Game Day, where we'll have a big stage set up in RJ, and then we'll do just like College Game Day. They'll show some highlights, talk about previous games, and talk about previous players. So that's going to be a new addition to the game. And then we're gonna squeeze about
However many of your fire marshals are gonna let it squeeze in.
They'll be counting.
When I'm asked how many tickets we're gonna sell, my answer is until the fire marshal says stop. That's the answer. And he reports to him, so I'm counting on him to kind of up that a little bit.
I think he's on vacation.
Okay. That's good. But you know, so we had other elements. We've added Jim Gardner's here, the voice of the Panthers, and We've added the pay-per-view, and that's gonna have to be big this year. I mean, you're obviously having to limit. Last year was probably our lowest year in a while.
Yes.
And we still had 18,000. Mayor's got this software, we know how many people are wherever you are, it's kind of scary. But we know how many people were in that stadium last year. We had 18,000 on probably one of the hottest days of the year. Now, probably, it was kind of fun to end on a note, of last year at the stadium. I knew that Buc-ee's was going, because it kept saying in the paper that Buc-ee's was going to close on the land about this week last year. So I go to the mayor, I said, look, we need to announce that Buc-ee's is coming at the softball. I've never been to one, I don't understand it, I don't get it, but I knew it was big.
Well, and so they come to me and they said, can you get Buc-ee's to bring their mascot up here? So I called the vice president of the company and I said, hey, we need the mascot up here for the softball. He goes, what's the softball? And I'm going, well, okay, so I explained it to him. He said, no, we don't do that. We only use that mascot when we have grand openings for the store. I said, well, ask the president. You're just the vice president. Ask him. And so he goes, okay. So he lands the plane. He calls me and he says, I don't know why, but he said, yes, we're sending the mascot up there. And so Shane, they got all this idea, we'll put the mascot back of the truck and drive it around.
So we put, to sell this to them, we put a bunch of videos together, and we got all the data together about how many people come to the game. We sent videos, so because he was going to be on the plane with him.
Yes.
So when he called back and says yes, so then I was like, oh crap, I didn't think this was actually going to happen. So I called the governor's office, I said, look, I need a favor. Either need the governor there or need to do a video. And it actually worked out better, I think, by her doing it by video. And so I say, please turn your attention to the scoreboard, and it comes on, and she says, the governor says, welcome to the softball, and something about, it's been rumored for months, but I can say now that it is true. Buc-ee's is coming to Benton. And I swear to you, I mean, we had 38,000 people one night, we've had 25, 30, whatever number you count. That stadium was never so loud than when that beaver rolled out.
Let me enter something about this. These guys asked me.
Oh, that's right.
It was the 50-year anniversary of the first time that Benton and Bryant played. Would you please go out and be with the coin toss to begin the game? And not being a real used to a lot of attention, I was so excited about it. And just about the time I got to midfield, here comes that beaver. And the crowd just roared, and nobody ever knew I was there. But since you told the story, it makes a lot.
I remember looking at you during that. I mean, those 500 mini football kids, I thought they were going to lose their ever-loving mind when that beaver rolled out. That's why I think I looked at him and was like, these people lose their mind over a beaver.
Well, let that beaver do the coin.
No, but it was hilarious. And it was perfect. I mean, Buc-ee loved it. I mean, we sent videos, immediately.
Yes.
They start sending videos to Buc-ee, and he just loved it. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better. So,
Matter of fact, the manager that came up there, he wants to move to Benton.
Yeah.
Because of what the spirit was of the softball. He said he's been to a lot of high school games in Texas, but nothing like the softball. So, and no matter where you go in the state of Arkansas, and you say you're from Saline County, do you know anything about the softball? Well, so it's all over. So it does bring an excitement because of the biggest rivalry in the state of Arkansas. And our goal was always to make it the biggest rivalry, to have more in the stands than a high school football playoff. So,
and we have people every year. There's always other high schools who would like to try to recreate. And it's so unique, though. There's really not another place in Arkansas where you have two schools of that size, that close to one another. And so we knew we had something unique. We knew we had eyeballs. And that's part of what drove having to go to a memorial is that Saline County was growing so fast. Neither one of us had a stadium to fit the kind of crowd that wanted to come. And that may be the case again. You know, we after 25 years, you're kind of thinking, okay, time for a reboot. You know, let's bring it back home. Let's try some different things. A lot of things have changed. We didn't have pay-per-view back then. Everybody's got 70-inch, you know, screen TVs now. They can stay at home and watch it and those kind of things. You never know what the weather's going to be the first week, you know, of the football season. Every once in a while we get lucky and it'd be great weather, but the last few years, I mean, it's been brutal. And so you bring it back and you kind of think through, you know, what do fans really want? And if the demand is such that people are going to complain they're not going to be able to go because we don't have enough seats, then we may look at going back. But that's going to be the school's decision. It's their game. Mayor and I and Gary are now in a different role, and now that he's the mayor, not at the school, it's their game. We just do this because we love it. We don't get paid for it, and we don't get anything out of it otherwise. We do it because the thing that always kept me coming back every year, because by the time you got to before kickoff, we'd been out there the night before. I got a story about that. So we had this idea of doing a tailgate party, and we ended up with like 60 to 80 booths. Well, you had to go and mark off the booths. You can defend yourself when I'm done.
I'm getting ready to defend myself.
So you have to go out and mark the booth spaces, 10 by 10 spaces. So that became
My job.
his job.
So
What does he do?
I go buy some paint. I go to Sherman Weeds where you get the best grade paint, and I buy paint, not knowing it was permanent paint. And they had just paved the parking lot the week before, so I'm up there with permanent white paint, marking 10 by 10 booths off for 100 booths, and it stayed.
No,
3 years. I think it's still there. That's so. But what's funnier than that is Gary decided he needs some panther paws at the chamber. So he got Allison Drennan. He said, "Hey, we need some panther paws." She said, "I agree." So they go out and get a paw, and they paint that panther paw 4 years ago, and it's still there. But they used washable paint. So,
Oh man. So yeah. So we've had some fun times. We've had some scary times. I remember the night we had the incident. I then lost my train of thought when I started thinking about you painting the floor, painting the pavement as to where I was going with my last one. But the thing I remember most about the night, we had the scare when they thought, gosh, there were shots fired, which weren't. It was the metal, those big metal things they have outside the stadium. But the thing I remember the most was, amidst all the chaos, Landon Trusty was the white hat that night, Brent. Referee, big tall referee, played for the Razorbacks. After everything settles down on the field, Landon walks over to me and says, "So, we gonna keep playing?" I said, "Landon, we don't even know where most of the Benton football team is. They were out underneath the scoreboard at Ringwinder Field when we found out where they were." And so I'll never forget that, man. Every time I see him, I remind him of that. So that was about the only moment of levity during that night.
if you remember, after the game was over, Benton still had cheerleaders missing.
Yeah.
And the sheriff and I kept walking around. They did just what they were taught in the school. When there was threat, go find somewhere and lock the door. And they did. And so our education system works well. I'll just tell you that. Because we spent an hour looking for people. That was, what, 2018?
It was 18, yeah. That's when we went to Saturday night. That obviously made a big difference because none of the other high school teams were playing. And that's the one thing we had a lot of is other schools would come, especially when we played on Saturday night because they played on Friday night. You had people from all over the state. I'd be walking around and you see people from Northeast, Northwest Arkansas who would come to the game just because they had heard of it. I mean, I had a guy from Louisiana. You meet him last year? This high school sports writer from Louisiana had heard about it. And him and his wife drive all the way up just to come to the games because they had heard about it. And so it was unique. It is unique. There's not another game like it. There's not another rivalry like it. There's not another story like it. And we have a lot of fun with it. And that's where I was going. The thing that kept, because we would be up there, he would paint it the night before, we would get up there early the next morning, and depending on what year, remember, when we first started out, I mean, we were doing anything and everything to promote it. So Channel 7 Daybreak wanted to do pep rallies at 5:30 in the morning. And they would do them at both places. So we'd start at 5:30 in the morning with pep rallies, and then go all day long until midnight. And so we were, we'd be dragging. And so the only thing that kept me coming back every year to keep doing it again was I would be down in the tunnel right before those kids. I mean, you had all these pee-wee kids out there on the field running out, and you watch them as they run out and they're looking at the scoreboard and see if they're on it. And then you go down into that, right by that tunnel, and you hear that crowd roar, and you watch those kids in those helmets and those eyes get really big, and they get really fired up. That's what kept me coming back every year.
I thought it was the hot dogs.
Well, yeah. but to hear those kids and to see the excitement that was on their face when they got to run out in front of that kind of crowd. I mean, only the Razorbacks at the time, got to run out in front of that big of a crowd. And so it's a big deal for the kids. And that's what it was all about, has always been all about for us. Giving them a memory they'll always have.
That they'll never get again because 99% of them don't get to go to college and play sports.
Yeah.
Well, let me mention one thing to you, may or may not be important. We were really fortunate, I guess, while we were there, that we beat Bryant 13 years in a row. And the real key to that, you are what you are, not because of what you do, but because of what you believe. And we had reached a point, really, and won some of those games we didn't need to win, or shouldn't have won, because we expected to. And the other part of that was, after 13 times in a row, the other team expects you to too. Now, that's the thing you can watch for this year. Going to be a great game. Both teams the last few years have been just outstanding. But what's going to happen, and you can watch for this, and this is what happened when Bryant beat us the first time. At halftime, we weren't ahead, and the game might as well have been over because all that expectation changed, and Bryant believed they were going to beat us, and they did. So you can look for that this year in this game. If Benton really puts the thought into Bryant that you're not going to beat us this time, then they very well may take the game. So you can say, I told you so, whatever I told you.
This is exactly how I envision tonight going. It's just a round table of discussion there all the way back. One quick thing before we wrap up. I played varsity football in 87, 88, 89 down in Prescott. It was one of the Curly Wolves under Coach Eddie Jackson. But about this time of year, was the time where two-a-days were getting going solid. And I don't know if y'all know what two-a-days are. I'm sure some of you do out here. So we had to get Curly Wolf time at 7:45 arrival.
3 days.
And so we were on the field at 9 and then off at 11 and go home and sleep or lay up till you had to be back at 4 o'clock for the evening practice too. I don't think they do that anymore. But can you tell us a little bit about what it was like back in the day at your schools when you were doing 2 days?
Don went line. We did 3 days.
3 days?
Yeah, I had to try a little bit harder, And you talk about Curly Wolves, and y'all laughed at that mascot. I coached in Port Lavaca, Texas. I coached the Fighting Sand Crowd. So Curly was. But I tell you, I see things now, and I think, you know, in some ways things are better, in some ways they're worse. But kids are not acclimated to being in the heat. Back in the day, most of us didn't have air conditioning, so it wasn't a matter of getting acclimated, but the heat frustration and that type of thing is really dangerous, and people really try to take more care of it. Maybe I did what my coaches did, which was, and I thought they knew everything, but they're pretty dumb about that kind of stuff, you know. Now people take a lot more care and make sure they get plenty of hydration, and they're certainly, you know, that's not keeping people from being tough, that's keeping them alive, you know. So that,
I'll tell this one about him. After he retired, he gets elected to the legislature. Didn't raise a dollar, didn't put out a single sign, and won going away. So we go through the first session, and I think I'm Speaker of the House then.
yeah.
And it's rolling up about practice time. And so he started getting that itch. And so I remember him coming into the office one day and said, what would happen if I went back into coaching? Would I have to resign? I'm like, no, you don't have to resign. You can coach and still serve and all that. I said, but just do this. 2 days are about to start. Why don't you go back out there and see if you still got that itch, and then come back and see me and let me know what you think. Never came back. But my favorite one of this time in the legislature, the early childhood program was running short of money. And so we had to propose a penny beer tax on a 6-pack of beer. And I'm sitting in this bigger chair, and this debate is going backwards and forwards and all these kind of things. And finally, to sum it all up, Coach Fite comes up to the roster there to speak for the bill. And he said, I don't know anything about this, because I don't drink beer. But I've been told that after the first 2 or 3, you're not going to miss that penny. And the whole House of Representatives erupts. And the bill passed, going away. But it was one of my favorite memories of sitting there, because I nearly fell out of my chair that day. So that's how special he is.
I have one last question, for Coach Fite. This will be my 20th year officiating high school football, and I can remember when Harmony Grove started out there, and I went out and introduced myself to the legendary Coach Parker.
Yeah.
And then there you were too. And so I wanted to see if you would speak a little bit about your time out there with him and out at Harmony Grove when they were getting the program started.
Oh, it's great, and it was a real opportunity for me. And I'll tell you, if you didn't know, Red Parker was the head coach at Clemson. He was the head coach at the Citadel, head coach at Delta State in Mississippi, offensive coordinator at Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, and then coached high school football. He went from there to do all that. Unique personality, one of the greatest guys that I've ever been around. He had, and on top of this, he had a pacemaker, had a defibrillator, and he had a heart pump. It was a battery thing. It was operated, actually kept his heart going on outside. The reason I wound up, when I was in the legislature, we were having a meeting with the school superintendents, and I was talking, and I said, you guys ever got a job open, let me know about it. So Danny Henley called me and said, will you come out here and help us? And he did that because Red was getting this heart pump put in, and I'm sure Danny thought he was going to die. So I went out there, and Red was in the hospital about 2 days, and he's sitting up there talking to the team when I walked in, you know. And so he just let me help him a little bit, but he told the team, he said, now I've got this thing on, and coaches had to learn how to carry batteries around in a suitcase. had to do that. But he told his team, he said, now, if we win a game, don't throw water on me, because I'll be dead as a hammer. He said, when we win, you can throw cow manure, you can throw whatever you want, don't throw water on me. And then, we were playing at Episcopal, and he didn't usually go out pregame warm-ups. He'd sit there in his office, and he'd be pretty quiet. And I had gotten through with my group, and I was coming in. As I walked by the door, I didn't say anything to him, because he was sitting there like he usually did. And he said, "Hey, Coach," he said, "this defibrillator went off about 3 times. And he said, boy, as soon as I get through with this, I'm going to have to go to the hospital. You're going to have to get me to the emergency room." He said, "Get out there and get the team and get them in here and get the other coaches in." So he got them all lined up, and he told them, he said, "I'm scared. This thing's going out." And when it would go off, it was like somebody hit you with a baseball bat. And he didn't mind hollering when it went off. He'd do that. But he called the team in there and set them down, said, "This thing's going off about 3 or 4 times now." And he said, "I'm a little bit scared about it, and I'm going to get somebody to take the emergency room." But he said, "First 3 plays, I want you to run this and this and this." So he made sure he got those plays called before he went over to the hospital. Yeah. But it's just a special deal, unique for me, and I love Harmony Grove. And those kids are so unspoiled, so excited about getting to play football. And that's something you don't realize about Bryant. Now, we talk about Benton and Bauxite, and they were playing forever. And at one time, Benton was 5,000 people, and Bauxite was about 5,000 people. But Bryant didn't start playing football till about 1949. But more recent, and then they've grown into real power. Things are so different now. I guess you can go to school about anywhere you want to, and I wind up seeing guys at Bryant coming from nearly anywhere, and I guess same thing's true at Benton. You used to have to play what hand you were dealt. Now you can go out and get your own hand, I guess.
Well, I guess since we're at the Saline County History and Heritage Society, you are a piece of Saline County history, because you're the only coach that coached at all 4 schools that are in the confines of the county line. That's pretty cool.
As I say, pretty keep a job. No, I did, and I'll tell you that it's hard to be around these guys without me getting real gushy. It's something that draws you together. Sports are special, and that it's much more than just playing the game. It's all those things that they talked about that you're able to accomplish through that, and hopefully, great Christian men that you're associated with just blesses your life. I'm so grateful for them, to be a part of it.
Well, that was awesome. Any questions from the audience for the panel here? Got one right here.
I don't need a microphone, I need my teacher voice.
Okay.
My name is Randy Gullett, and the reason why I'm here is that I saw this advertised on Facebook. And Coach Fite was my high school football coach at Bryant, along with my brother. And I taught school for 41 years because of Dwight Fite. I coached football 41 years because of Dwight Fite. I taught engineering and robotics because of Dwight Fite. I learned my work ethic because of Dwight Fite. One day I weighed 126 pounds when I was a senior, and I saw my name on the roster. And I wanted to get out there and play. So on 2-a-days, 3-a-days, whatever we had, I had to impress Coach Fite. So I had to go out there and bull in the ring, and we all know what that is, don't we? Against Charlie Clawwitter. And Charlie was one of the great big guy. He was one of the men on the team. So I said, you know what, if I go out against him, that's going to impress the Coach Fite. I went out there, little Randy, I was trying to make an impression. He said, Gullett, he said, boy, you're tough as a nickel sack of jawbreakers. And you know what? Danny English, Jim English, all that crew, every time they see me, they still remind me of what you call me and said, you're as tough as a nickel sack of jawbreaker. And so, in my teaching classroom management, I use Coach Fite's motivation skills. I have never, ever, ever seen a motivator like Dwight Fite. We would run through a brick wall for that man. And I want to also say this. I love this guy because what he did for me and my family and the Bryant community and all the rest of my players, we love this guy, and I will go to my grave remembering Dwight Fite.
That's awesome.
Go Hornets.
Well, I just, Coach Fite, one of my most memorable teams you coached was the '83 Miners. That was an incredible team. Would you talk about that team just a little bit?
Well, we didn't get scored on till the 8th game of the year, for one thing.
Not that he remembers.
And we just had 18 players and only had one sophomore. And I remember during those 2-a-days, something happened. He got aggravated and he's going to quit. And I told him, there ain't no way you're going to quit. You're the only sophomore on the whole team. And I made him stay. And just had a great team, had a great year, had so much fun with them. Yeah. And it was kind of unique because Bauxite had gone undefeated in 1959. And I had so many players on that team whose dads had played on the only undefeated team before that. It's kind of unique.
I just remember that playoff game with Horatio.
Yeah.
Because the drag line was right there by the stadium.
Yeah.
And every time y'all would score, it'd fire off that horn.
Yeah. And he had a big sign on the drag line that you could see.
Yeah.
And that's kind of neat, you know, you're playing for the Miners and you got a big drag line out there.
I'm Kathy Blue Allen, and I am a graduate of Bryant High School. Yay! There it is. This is to Coach Fite. It's from Jerry Harold.
Oh,
Jerry Harold.
yeah.
He saw my post on Facebook about you going to be here tonight, and he wanted to know if I would read this to you. He said, I've been wanting to know about Dwight Fite for a long time. My dad and his dad were great friends and coached the C.W. Lewis Little League team I played on about 60 through 70 years ago. Dwight went to Henderson State and I went to SAU. My sophomore year, I was a wingback and we ran multiple sets of offense. On a play in the first half, I was moved into a tight spot to help our OT double team HSU's left DT. I came down on Dwight as he was taking on our OT. So our tailback broke off tackle with a nice gain. In the second half, we ran the same play, the same formation. This time we didn't catch Dwight by surprise. He stepped into my block attempt and threw a forearm flipper into my chin, and I stopped the play in the hole. I was seeing stars and looking out at ear hole. I hope Dwight sees this. I'd sure like to hear from him. He was a great coach at Bryant years ago, but I've lost touch. I spent most of my 40 years of coaching in Northeast Texas and am planning to move back from Arkansas, my beloved home, the state of Arkansas, after I recover from my hip replacement. He said I'll be buying off the grid, and he wanted to make sure to tell you that he missed seeing you and that you were a great friend to him and coach.
Boy, how wonderful.
Pretty good.
Yeah, and on top of that, that memory, this has been, what, 40 or 50 years since that happened. I don't ever remember that second part. I remember Jerry blocking me that first part, but I don't remember the second part. I'll tell you a story, and I don't mean this to be bad on Jerry, but he was coaching at Canton, Texas. and something happened that he hit the principal. And they fired him, but he got offers from a lot of different schools. And some other people felt like they had a principal that they didn't direct. But he was a great guy, yeah.
Well, that was an awesome roundtable discussion, guys. I appreciate you all being here. Thank you, panel, for coming out tonight. Thank you, audience, for coming out tonight.
Before,
We got one more question.
Donald, right?
I've
Donald's
been
dad.
called wrong half my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Donald Melton Fulcher was the president of our Saline County History and Heritage Society for many years. And Melton was a fine person, a bauxite miner. And I just wanted to make that connection and how much we thought of Melton and Daska too.
Man.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Amen. Yes.
Well, thank y'all for being here.
I want
Thank
to
y'all.
say one thing too, since we're in this building, and most of you know about our archives, but there are high school yearbooks here, and you can see some of Coach Fite's and Fulcher's and Farmer's history in these, and feel free to come peruse the annuals, the yearbooks from different schools, and if you have any that you want to donate, I think we're missing a couple of yearbooks from some classes. Steve, you could probably help me out with those years. But it's
We
just
need Harmony
fascinating to
Grove.
look
We
back
need
and
Harmony
see.
Grove.
So, yeah. This was from my 1989 Panther yearbook when it was a first for Benton. We had three straight years in the playoffs under Dwight Fite. Yeah, it's a good time. Thank you.
Amen.
Well, thank y'all for coming. It's been fun. I've had more fun than anything. Exactly. Yeah, don't ever call the mayor to mark your parking lot.
Yeah, feel free to come on up and ask them questions before they get out of here if you want to.
That's
Thank you everyone for coming.
Hey, Randy, sorry.